husband and best man. But all of these things that depend on relationship, all of these things that define who I am to people, my personality, my position in life, is based on the relationship that I have with other people and the things that I've gone through with other people. I'm not a father until my children make me a father. And our Father in heaven is not the God he is until he creates his own children. There's no one to call him Father. There's no one to have that relationship with him. There's no one to fulfill that part of his personality. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined with his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Our dogs and cats run around, unless they're in one of those a little more froofy home than I have, without clothes all the time. They're not ashamed. That's because they're innocent. They don't have the knowledge of good and evil. There's nothing for them to be ashamed of. It's just who they are. When a lion chases down an impala on the Serengeti and eats it, he's not being evil. He's being who he is. He has no knowledge of good and evil. He's just doing what he was created to do. Evil is not a thing that you do. Evil is an attitude that you do it with. It's a knowledge that you do it with. My children have often asked, or have asked me sometime back, how do I know how closely I'm walking with God, how good I am, if I'm sinning or not sinning? And when they asked me that the first time, I thought about it, and I thought, well, the Bible says that we are born sinners. And you look at a little baby, and what is that? And everybody thinks that innocent little baby has never done anything wrong. It's just a little baby. How could that be a sinner? And yet a baby has one thing on its mind, and that's self. Sin. That baby will scream its heart out to get fed in the middle of the night, no matter how tired its mother is. It doesn't care how tired its mother is. It's not even aware that its mother is tired. It just wants to be fed. It will complain until it's changed. It will complain constantly about everything that it wants. It is the center of its world. And as we grow up, we become more and more aware of others. And as we grow less in sin and closer to Christ, our life becomes more and more about others and less about ourselves. That is how you define where your walk is. If you're walking for yourself, you're basically living a life that Christ never intended. When Adam was dressing that garden, who did he seek to please? He dressed it for God. He loved his Father in heaven. He loved the pre-incarnate Jesus that walked with him through that garden. He was doing it for him, and when God caused that garden to grow, who was he doing it for? He was doing it for Adam. When they lived in that pre-fallen world, everything they did was to love the other one, to give to the other one. It wasn't about self, it was about other. Now the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, "Indeed, has God said you shall not eat from any tree of the garden?" There are three fundamental interpretations of the serpent in this verse, held by different people. The actual word is not serpent. The actual word in the original language, strangely enough, is the bright one. It's the same root word as we get for the highest levels of angels in heaven. It would be the same root word that you would use to describe Satan. It's bright one. It's not like a snake. And so in the Christian faith, we interpret this as Satan. And we interpret Satan as an adversary to God. He is there to thwart God's plan. God has a plan for man in the Garden of Eden. He's going to redeem the earth after the fall of Satan. He's going to make the earth a wonderful place, and we're part of that plan. We were created from the beginning to be God's helpmate in the exact same way that woman is created to be the helpmate of man. And he wants us to experience that relationship on earth so that we will understand how that relationship is supposed to work in heaven and in the spiritual world. And we see Satan as in the Christian faith as the adversary of God. Someone who's there to thwart that plan, to destroy that plan. The Jewish rabbis see Satan as a tool of God. He was called the accuser. He's there to help God's plan, whether he comprehends how he's doing it or not, come to fruition. It's almost the opposite. It's still Satan, but Satan's role is one that's intentional and on purpose, and I'm not so sure that the rabbis are that far off from this. They teach that Satan is part of this. And it makes sense because, like with the tree of knowledge of good and evil, I can never understand how truly wonderful it is to run in the daylight until I've stumbled in the darkness. I can never truly comprehend the glory that God has created, the true wonder of goodness, until I've been touched by the evil that there could be. I'm not going anywhere near the yin and yang of the Eastern religions in that. I'm not saying that there's fate and you must have one to have the other, because I don't believe you must have one to have the other. But I am saying that it makes the contrast, it makes you see it in what was before was black and white, now in stereo vision, because you see the contrast. The other one, the other interpretation, remember, we don't know what the animals looked like before the fall, before there were thistles on the ground, is that this serpent was a walking, talking being in the garden. Maybe inhabited by Satan in much the same way that Judas was at the crucifixion, or before the crucifixion. But he was an actual walking, talking animal. And he was clever. And he saw himself as a good companion for man. There may have been some jealousy here. Along comes this woman. And she's taken my role, and before it was me and Adam playing the game of chess out in the garden. And now here she is, and he's head over heels, crazy in love with her. And I'm out. That's a third interpretation. The truth is that there's probably some aspect of all of it. We know Satan hates us very much because we're made in the image of God, and God has a special place for us in his heart. And we know that Satan unknowingly helps God fulfill his plans. And we know that Satan does want to thwart the plans of God because he wants earth for himself. He wants to be God. And the woman said to the serpent, "From the fruit of the tree of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree which in the middle of the garden God said, you shall not eat from it, nor touch it, or you will die." We already read the verse where God said to Adam what it was. He said to Adam, "You shall not eat of it." He didn't say anything about touching it. Whether she added this because, if I touch it and I don't die, maybe it's okay to have a little nibble and I won't die. Or we don't know if it was Adam loving her so much that he didn't want her anywhere near danger. He added, "Don't touch it." Because he wanted to keep her far, far away. Much the same way that the rabbis just kept adding and adding and adding to the laws that the Jewish people had to follow, until they were so far away from the actual law that they weren't even talking things that God had any intention for their lives. Or we don't know if it was just in the excitement of the moment. When he said, "You shall not eat from any tree in the garden," she just overblew it just like he did. He said, "You can't eat from any tree," when there was only one tree would be involved. And she said, "You can't eat from it, you can't touch it, but it's only one tree." The serpent said to the woman, "You surely will not die." So here the serpent just flat out lies. Before he's enticing her, before he's questioning, is God a liar? And then he himself becomes what he is, the father of all lies, fulfills his role. And he says to her flat out that she will not die. "For God knows that in the day that you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So he's saying the reason you won't die is because you'll be like God, and God is an eternal being. It's a lie. Knowledge of good and evil doesn't make you eternal. So his reasoning behind it is even a lie. And Satan is revealing his own heart in here. What was Satan's fall about? I will ascend and be like the Most High. He's revealing to the woman, he's saying to the woman, well, you must want what I want. I want to be God. You must want to be God too. He's revealing his own heart in the very lies he tells him. When Satan approaches you, or when anybody in life approaches you with something that doesn't feel right, realize that they're assuming you want the same thing that they want. And what you should be wanting is what Christ wants. So if what they want, what they're doing is they're revealing their heart to you. They're revealing their feelings to you, what their desires are, where they're coming from. Then the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise. In the New Testament, we're taught what about sin? That the root of it, the pride of life, is it? Oh, the lust of life, lust of something. Then the lust of the eyes, then the pride of life. Basically, he hits all three definitions from the New Testament. how that's worded in the New Testament. First, good for food. It's lust for life, lust for, there's another word there that I'm missing. And then lust of the eyes, and then the pride of life is the knowledge. He hits on all three cylinders of sin. He hits her in all three aspects of it. This is important to him. She took from it the fruit and ate. She gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and then they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. Okay, I want you to, we're going to back up just a minute here. Adam and Eve, to this point, to this moment, had lived in a pre-fallen world. What was that marriage like? Adam was not the type of guy that said, look, what's the deal? I fall asleep, I'm a single man, I wake up, I'm married. That's not right. No, he wasn't in a fallen world. He wasn't looking at this bad. He loved everything about her. His intents and desires for her were only good. Hers were the same towards him, only good. There was not a selfish bone in their bodies, you might say. It was all about loving the other one. He was the perfect man being made directly from the hands of God. She was the perfect woman being made directly from the hands of God. There has never been, never will be a more beautiful woman, I'm sure, in all of history. There has never been a stronger, leaner, more athletic man in all of history, or ever will be, than Adam. They were the original creation of God. They lived in a world of no sin. They never crossed their minds. Is he looking at another woman? There wasn't another woman to look at. Is she cheating on me? Is there, what's he really saying when he's saying that? None of that existed. They had the perfect marriage beyond our even ability to comprehend the marriage, because we can't think of people in the way that they thought of people at that time. They were in love, a true love,